Good afternoon. Welcome. My name is Randy Schellenberg, President of Comfort Tech Seating. Today's webinar is another one in the series of education videos put together by Comfort Tech Seating. Today's is entitled Specialized Seating for Seniors and Caregivers. Today we'll be joined by representatives from senior living communities, long-term care, nursing homes, directors of culinary services, director of nursing, as well as certified nursing assistants. And so to each one of you, I welcome you and thank you for the time that you've spent in joining us this afternoon. The learning objectives for this presentation will identify how dining chairs designed to swivel, turn, roll, prevent injury to staff, eliminate the need to push, pull, shove, and twist, and then further reduce flooring and furniture costs and increase occupancy. And I will highlight these items later on in the presentation. Truly, the journey of aging robs many of their ability to move and to live independently. The decline in mobility prevents many from doing some of the simpler things in life, such as enjoying a meal with a friend or working on a Christmas puzzle. Caregivers too endure a sense of helplessness, as often there's nothing they can do to improve the situation. Caregivers frequently lack the physical strength required to assist a person to a place of greater comfort or enjoyment. Within every care community, truly, the kitchen is the heart of the home. It is where we are nourished. It is where we gather. It is good for the body, the mind, and the soul. It's used by all. It is at the dining room where intergenerational relationships are fostered and cherished. But what if a resident doesn't have the strength or coordination to get seated at the table? Our focus today will be on caregivers. Physical demands of caregivers increase daily. Caregivers are challenged to provide increased levels of care without bringing injury to themselves. Daily mealtime challenges experienced by caregivers include assisting a person move up to or away from the table, assisting a person of 300 pounds get seated and moved up to the table, assisting a person using a rollator or wheelchair transfer into a dining chair and then moved up to the table, providing feeding assistance when different styles of jerry chairs are being used, or assisting a person who's not capable of understanding verbal instructions also get seated and moved up to the dining table. So how does a person get seated at the table? For most of us, this is second nature. We position a chair, we seat ourselves, we lift the chair slightly and scoot forward. The same functions are required if you're a mobility challenged person, but assistance needs to be happening between positioning the chair and getting seated, and between getting seated and lifting the chair and then scooting forward. And in each case, it is a caregiver who has to provide the physical assistance in terms of putting that together. So how much physical effort can a caregiver safely provide? These tasks involve an awful lot of lifting, pushing, and pulling. According to the Silverstone Group, under normal conditions, a person can lift 35 pounds, a person can put 20% of their body weight and pull up to 30% of their body weight. So that means that a 140-pound caregiver capable of lifting 35 pounds can push 28 pounds and pull 42. A 200-pound caregiver can lift 35, extend it up to 50 if you wish, can push 40 pounds, and can pull 60 pounds. So essentially, a caregiver can move an empty chair, let alone moving a chair that has a person seated in it. Unfortunately, today's dining chair doesn't always provide as much of a solution. Dining chairs look like this when they're purchased. They're stylish. Typically, they've got arms, 4 legs, good cushioning, and designed to fit and augment the ambience of a room. However, after the chairs are purchased, they're often modified to look like this. We add green tennis balls to the base of the chairs. We'll try to assist by adding some casters to the front legs of chairs. In some cases, we'll just literally say the chair is unusable and we'll rely on a wheelchair. Or we look at some style of sort of a tub chair in terms of being able to accommodate it. because what we're trying to do is to move a seated person up to a table. Traditional dining furniture, when used by seniors, is often inadequate because dining chairs were never designed to move. If you look at the design of a chair, it requires friction between each leg and the floor to be able to hold its position. So moving a chair is not what the chair was designed for. The increased use of cushion flooring also prevents the chair from moving, as softer floors prevent serious injury when someone falls and lands on the floor. However, softer flooring also provides a crater or a cavity for each chair leg, further restricting the ability of a caregiver to be able to move the chair and the seated person forward. And size matters. Certainly, seniors are getting bigger, and it makes it virtually impossible to push, pull, shove, and twist when moving a seated person up to a table. It became apparent very early on in our process that the caregiver was overlooked in the design of furniture. After all, it is the person standing behind the chair, the caregiver, that needs to provide the assistance when moving a seated person up to a table. So how does a caregiver or senior move a seated person up to the table safely, with ease and grace, and without incurring personal injury? By design, chairs should swivel, turn, roll, and lock for safety. And by design, tables should lift and extend individually. And so what we want to do for the next few moments is just to review each one of these action words and see what that does in the design of a chair. The T2 series of chairs was designed specifically to reduce the physical demands of caregivers. By design, chairs have these particular features. The chair at the extreme left is your standard, typical, everyday dining chair. The next chair swivels. You can see that there's a gap between the base of the chair and the seat of the chair. And so this chair is split in half, where the top half is able to move separately from the bottom. The middle chair of the three swivels and rolls. So this chair is also split in half. The top half moves separately from the bottom. But once a person is seated, the chair can also be rolled forward. The chair on the extreme right is a chair where the entire chair is able to turn and roll. Thus, care communities are able to select the style of chair that they need for the type of care that each of their residents needs to have. Let's look at a few examples. This is a chair that swivels and locks for safety. You can see that there's no interference. The chair is stable. The chair locks at 3 o'clock position. It can now be rotated to the 12 o'clock position. The lever can be released by the caregiver or can be released by the seated person. In this particular case, we're showing a chair that has a 20-inch seat height. And so we've even provided a footstool so that the person is able to rest their feet once they are seated at the table. This chair swivels, rolls, and locks for safety. This is the same chair as we saw in the previous one. You can see that the seat is positioned at 3 o'clock to the table. The caregiver will release the lock and rotate the chair directly to the table. It locks again at 12 o'clock. As the resident, in this case, is too far from the table to eat comfortably, the caregiver is able to move them forward to the table and lock the rear brakes for safety. Even when approaching the chair with a rollator, there's plenty of room to assist, as there's no interference again in terms of allowing the resident to be seated in the chair. This chair turns, rolls, and locks for safety. In this case, you can see that it's the entire chair that is able to turn and roll and move. The images down the left-hand side indicate that this feature is available on a chair that's 22 inches wide. There's also a 24-inch and a 30-inch chair that are capable of carrying 600 pounds with each of these same features. So with this style of chairs, even the largest residence that you have will now be relatively easy for the caregivers to be able to accommodate and move up to a table. This chair, somewhat unique to the industry, turns, rolls, and by default is always locked. You'll see that the caregiver is depressing a bar that is placed in the middle of the back. The front wheels of this chair are always locked unless the caregiver is standing behind the chair and while the back bar is being depressed. The moment the back bar is released, the front wheels of the chair are once again locked. Within care communities, this chair is highly desired because no matter where the chair is, staff know that that particular chair is safe for use should any of the residents decide that they want to be seated with or without a caregiver's assistance. Providing feeding assistance can easily be accommodated when tabletops are adjusted specific to each resident. Residents are encouraged to feed themselves when plates and food is positioned in such a manner that discourages spills. Anytime a resident is able to actively work independently, certainly frees up the caregiver to address other needs within the dining room. Tops lift and extend individually. In this particular design, which is the 4-in-1, the tops are able to elevate themselves 10 inches and they extend out 6 inches from their standard base. Well, it might be ideal to acquire a new set of chairs for a facility based on what you've just seen. That may not always be possible and it may not be in the budget. ComfortTech has also designed the caddy, which is a retrofit and attaches to existing chairs. The caddy balances the need to reduce the need for physical effort on behalf of the caregiver, retain a senior sense of dignity and self-worth, all without compromising safety. So you can see the range of movement that a standard chair is able to have once the caddy is attached to the base of that chair. So what does this chair look, what does the caddy look like when it's attached onto different chairs? This is a typical dining chair. You can see that the caddy will fit underneath the chair. And as you can see in the application photo beside it, it is not noticeable as it fits inside the footprint of the chair. In most cases, a caddy would be attached to maybe 30% of the chairs that you would have in your facility. We call this chair the Contessa 200 as it has a round back. Again, the chair turns, rolls when the caddy is attached. Contessa 300. And again, you can see how the caddy attaches to the bottom side of that chair. Design features of the caddy are as follows. It attaches to existing chairs. It has a low profile design. The entire chair is raised less than 3/4 of an inch above the floor. It fits inside the footprint of an existing chair, so there's no tripping hazards. It's fitted with 3-inch and 4-inch casters, so it provides easy moving even over carpeted surfaces. It includes anti-tip glides, front wheel tension control, foot activated rear locking casters. It's rated for 450 pounds. It attaches to both arm or armless chairs, and it is fully adjustable. So within your care community, how many residents require daily mealtime assistance at the expense of the caregiver? How many residents use a walker or a rollator and need assistance transferring into a chair? How many residents are 300 pounds and require assistance? How many residents sit in a wheelchair simply because there's no way for caregivers to assist them up to a table? How many residents require special attention, Alzheimer's or Parkinson's? And how many residents have difficulty following verbal instructions and thus require more assistance from a caregiver? I highlight this particular video as it pertains an awful lot to Alzheimer's and memory care. Instructions that one will receive would indicate that in caring for a person that is living with Alzheimer's is that there should be an encouragement not to surprise them, not to approach them from behind, and to spend as much time as you can developing a relationship bond. And yet, if assistance needs to be provided in terms of moving them up to a table, You're literally doing that every time, surprising them and approaching them from behind. When reduced effort is required on behalf of the caregiver, they can actively engage in conversation with each resident. So who benefits? When the physical demands of a caregiver are reduced, who wins? We suggest that there's a win for the CEO. There's reduced workplace injuries, reduced WCB claims, absenteeism, overtime. Stress and anxiety is reduced for the resident as well as for the caregiver. And furniture and flooring replacement costs are also reduced. At the same time, we're creating a safer work environment, more enjoyable mealtime routine, healthier work environment, and there's a better retention of staff, as well as increased resident occupancy. The family will also notice the difference as their family member will experience an increased sense of dignity and self-worth. Permit me just to highlight a field test based on the increased resident occupancy that's identified in that middle column. Daily at this facility in the Midwest, this community receives tour requests from family members searching for a new home for their parents. Typically, these tours occur during meal times. To demonstrate the high level of care provided at his community, a complete set of chairs with mobility assist features were placed in the dining room. Specifically, he did not want staff to be pushing, shoving, twisting when assisting a seated person up to or away from the table. His rationale: by demonstrating a high level of care for each resident within the dining room, even for residents who have become less and less mobile, family members can expect that same level of care to be shown throughout his community. Specialized seating for seniors and caregivers. As a result, dining chairs designed to swivel, turn, roll, and lock for safety, reduce stress and anxiety for both the caregiver and the resident, and create a more enjoyable mealtime routine. Within every care community, there are truly those functions that are personal, private, and intimate, and that can't be showcased or can't be highlighted. And yet, as we mentioned earlier, the dining room is open to the public, and it's open to all. Care communities are encouraged to use this public space to build up the self-esteem and self-worth of each of their residents. Chairs designed to swivel, turn, roll, and lock for safety. I want to thank you for taking time to join us in this webinar. I trust this information was informational and valuable to you. My name is Randy Schellenberg. Please reach out to myself. My email address is there. Should you want to see more of these videos, you can also go to www.comforttech.com/better. Again, my thanks for joining us. Have yourself a wonderful afternoon. Goodbye.